This is Generation Space, the official podcast of Air Force Space Command. In this episode, we're talking to two airmen who started building satellites back when they were cadets at the Air Force Academy. Now they're doing it as officers at the Space and Missile Systems Center.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Master Sergeant Dave Salinitri, and we are here talking Generation Space at lovely LA Air Force Base, home of Space and Missile Systems Center, as you can see by this giant logo here, because it's not like an Air Force production or a military production unless there's a big logo that says exactly like where you are or what you're doing. So yay for being literal. So I have two awesome guests here. Why don't you introduce yourself, Sarah?
I'm Captain Woody Go. I serve in Remote Sensing Systems Directorate.
Cool.
I am First Lieutenant Cecily Agu. I'm in the Launch Enterprise Systems Directorate.
Cool. And now both of you are Academy grads, is that correct?
That is.
Correct.
That's cool. So I know one of the things that I'm a little curious about is the program that you worked on, FalconSat. Why don't one of you guys talk about that and, that and kind of tie it to what we're doing today?
Sure. So as part of my senior capstone project, I worked on FalconSat. So FalconSat is kind of like a constellation of small satellites that that the Air Force Academy has cadets work on. It's a really interesting opportunity to actually do hands-on engineering. So I know it's something that perhaps you may not get the opportunity to do, perhaps throughout your career in the Air Force, but it's a good starting point to get a basic understanding of engineering. So I did testing and operations for subsystem level components for FalconSat 6 and also FalconSat 8. And I can go into a lot of details about that. I know. Without, I guess, going into a lot of acronyms, as we like to do here in the military. But with FalconSat 8, at the time when we were going through all of the testing, we would also be in charge of all the design of experiment. So that was an interesting thing to do because, so while there were contractors helping us and we worked alongside them, it was also cool to be able to say, hey, I did X, Y, and Z, and I was able to make something, and I was able to have say that I had experience doing this. So like what we would do at the end of each semester, we'd have an end of semester review. And this was central to the ASHA department. And we'd have both our AFRL program managers who are providing the funding source for FalconSat, as well as other interested space professionals, either from Buckley Air Force Base, Schriever Air Force Base, and Peterson, and anyone else who'd be interested in hearing some cadets talk about what they did for their wonderful science project. That's actually going into space, talk about that. So I would say that was probably one of the biggest presentations I've had to give.
Well, it's pretty cool, like something that you worked on as a cadet, a cadet, I kind of attributed that to being like a college kid. How many college kids get to work on something that then the DoD throws up in space, puts up there in space? I mean, that's got to be pretty cool. And Sarah, I know you were talking to me a little bit about, we got STP coming up very soon, and there's an academy tied to that, is there not?
Yeah, there is. So one of the payloads that'll be on is FalconSat 7, which when I was there, they were first starting it. It was in the first or second year, so now, like 7 years later, they're finally launching it. But what it is, it's a photon sieve, and it's used to image the sun. So pretty much this device, this contraption shoots out of, I think it was 3 cube units box, and it looks like parchment paper or aluminum foil put together, and there's these tiny dots in it somehow that make an image of the sun. So it's really incredible what they're doing there.
That's wild.
The motto of that space capstone program, which I completed in 2013, is to learn space by doing space. And so what she mentioned is we have a lot of touch time building these things. We have a lot of time briefing these. So then when we're now working on satellites that are $2-3 billion versus like the 14 million, which seemed like a lot back then, and then now you're working on a $3 billion satellite. It is for real. It's for keeps this time.
Yeah, and for FalconSat, a lot of the experiments that are on these small satellites are a lot of propulsion characterization technologies that either AFRL or other government agencies may be interested in. So the interesting thing is, they may show up on these larger billion-dollar satellites here in the future, but they were they had their beginnings with cadets. So that was, in my opinion, one of the best things you can do in your undergrad is to be able to have some sort of hands-on experience. And also, too, what I did as a senior is I was also an instructor. So I was teaching freshmen and some sophomore level cadets how to be operators. So we have a ground station, or the academy has a ground station for FalconSat. So we were training the cadets to be space operators for what was FalconSat 3, which actually originally launched, I believe, in like 2007.
Something like that.
And it
You all are
it
saying
must
that like that's like 1,000 years ago. I just want to say, being operational since 2007 doesn't mean you're like that old. So I'm just going to do a little disclaimer there.
Considering its mission life, I think it was like a year originally.
Yeah, it's well past its mission life. And I know they started using FalconSat 3. When I was there in 2013, they were using it at Vandenberg in their initial space course. And they were trying to get it hooked up to run out of, I think, West Point as well for their cadets.
Well, that's wild. That's pretty awesome. So I'm just connecting the dots. You went from Colorado Springs to LA. That's kind of cool because I went to Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that's not to knock Biloxi, Mississippi, but life's been pretty good, huh?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So, I mean, being out here in LA where you're doing something that's not just so. I feel like this is the hub for like creativity. I feel like looking around, just walking around this campus. It feels like it's a Silicon Valley of Air Force bases. What's it been like being stationed here so far?
Well, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but for me, I was at least lucky enough to have some connection to my undergraduate degree of astronautical engineering. So what I do now here in Launch Enterprise Systems Directorate is that I do mission assurance activities and sit on console for launches.
Oh, okay.
So I do get to
cool.
use some engineering and orbital mechanics-based information, but I like it because of all the interpersonal relationships and connections that you can make here. You get to know so many different people who are not just here on base or even in El Segundo, but just throughout the U.S. and even worldwide. We have a lot of suppliers, as you can imagine, on a launch vehicle or on a rocket, as other people might say. It's a lot of parts. You have to do a lot of hardware certification and checkout, so being able to go out and see not just, sunny California and the West Coast, but also go see other parts of the U.S. has been really cool.
That's gotta be pretty neat. And and so both of you having like a space background too with the academy, to be doing acquisition, for Air Force Space Command at SMC. The way that worked out has got to be pretty convenient, I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's been great. Actually, so the end of semester review, she talked about you brief all these colonels and generals, and so nowadays when we do our program reviews, I'm just super comfortable briefing because it's like, I've already spoken to this level of audience. I know what they're expecting. The charts should look this way and whatnot. So it's been a pretty good transition.
That's awesome. I feel like that's we talk about deliberate development sometimes. I feel like that was like a really smart move on the Air Force to make sure y'all go from not acquisition for anything, but for specifically for for space. What's been the coolest part about working your career here? What that you've seen? What's been like maybe the most fun not being part of a project or best memory thing you talked about to mom and dad the most about?
Yeah, I got to sit as part of a launch and early on-orbit test. So after they launch the satellite, you unpack it, you let it sit to let the contaminants bake off and do all this stuff. So they're doing all this stuff, and I'm sitting in the factory floor, and it looks like what you see on TV, like Mission Control at Houston. It looks like that, a bunch of screens, bunch of people. There's like the propulsion people, the thermal people, and that they ask them each, are you go, are you go, are you go? Okay, let's deploy this contraption now.
No, you're go.
I'm go. That's right.
I'm working one pun there.
I have said that. I do say that. But we sit in as captains, and we'll have like a aerospace representative with us. But we sit as the government, the thumbs up for them to go ahead and continue on this real life payload in space. So that's been really cool to. I had when I was a kid, like 5th grade, I participated in space camps and stuff, and that was really cool. And to to actually do it for real has been really awesome.
Yeah, like I think you said you're playing for keeps now.
Yeah.
You know, like the thing that you grew up, you know, some kids grew up thinking like 2 on, 2 out, you know, bomb the ninth, you know, and hitting a home run. Like you're thinking about, no, you know, what success looks like to me. What I'm dreaming about is, you know, working here, you know, in space, and you know, you're doing it. I mean, that's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's been really rewarding.
What's been one of your better memories, man?
I would say the coolest thing is doing space at this point in time and being able to see the transition for multiple space systems. Like, for example, actually a few months ago in Launch Enterprise, there's a program called the Evolved Expendable Launch Vehicle, or EELV, that recently underwent a new name change and also just a transition for this program, and now it's called the National Security Space Launch Program. But ELV had been around for 25 years, and if I had to say, I mean, that's older than I am. So, but it's cool to see those previous launch vehicles, and then what I do now to help continue that legacy has been really cool. And then also seeing where it's going and being privy to all sorts of new developments, even if I'm not necessarily working on every single other project or program that's in the directorate. Just being aware of what's going on has been pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool too, the fact that you said you're, you know, under 25 years old, and like I don't know where else, like what other company or program, whatever there may be out there, where you could be, you know, under 25 years old and working on not multi-million but multi-billion-dollar programs. I mean, that's pretty neat. Like there was a story that someone did over at the ops floor at Triever, and talking about like the average age of someone flying a satellite there, you know, multi-billion-dollar satellites, is like 23 or 24 years old. I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
I know, it's a lot of trust that's going on there.
It is. And like, you know, I don't remember a time where I've put on my phone and not had GPS either, you know, because like something that we did, you know, like it's, you know, it's a lot of trust, but, you know, it seems like it's rightfully earned too. I don't know. This was something that I've really enjoyed about the Air Force. Like we actually empower people, you know, with minds, you know, to do great things. Yeah. It's been cool. It's been cool. So what's something that you are looking forward to the most in, you know, the next year or two about being here, or your duration, you know, of your assignment here? What's something that you're really hoping to accomplish being part of SMC?
Well, SMC is reorganizing. I think that's been in the news for about a year now. But
2.0.
2.0, like next month, I think is the official 2.0 switch for all of us. The really cool part of it, that is now I, as a remote sensing, like I said earlier, systems directorate, now am seated next to the MilSatcom people. I'm seated next to the GPS people, all in the production core. So our satellites are in production phase, and now I get to sit side by side and talk to what they're doing and how I can leverage those lessons learned onto my program and so forth. And so we've tried to do that, but like just even physically speaking, MilSatcom is across the street. So it's hard to work with someone who's not right next to you. So now with this reorganization, I'm really looking forward to just being able to tap the guy next to me, but saying, hey, have you seen this problem on your program, and how do I fix it? Yeah,
what do you think that will, like, what do you think that will result in? Do you think it would be like quicker, more efficient, better? What's the goal there?
All of that.
All that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of good stuff. You know, we're doing a podcast later, and I don't know, you know, if that one's going to air before this or what, but it's with the Colonel. She's about to put on 06, I believe, and she's heading up SMC 2.0. Colonel B, I forget her name, but she's awesome, and just like, so we're pretty amped up to be able to talk to her about that, because I remember the SecAF talking about it a year or two ago. And now we're kind of, it seems like it's actually happening. You know, an idea is actually happening. That's cool. That doesn't always happen. What's something you're looking forward to here?
Oh, honestly, the next launch. So the next Delta 4 launch that we have is for GPS-1, which is actually called SV2. So
July.
It is in July 25th. We're
going to be out there, yeah. Episode 4, you know, that'll be for GPS-3,
Yeah, so for the next Delta launch is actually the last Delta 4 medium that will be flying in the fleet. So the first Delta launch was, I think, in around like 2000 and 2006 timeframe. So it's been a big workhorse of just government and also commercial assets. So I think it's really cool to be able to actually be around for that, and also for my systems. So I'm a responsible engineer for what are called solid rocket motors, the upper stage engine, which is called the RL10B-2. There's several variants of the RL10 produced and made by Aerojet Rocketdyne, and then also the ordnance. So when you think of ordnance, it's not like city ordinances and rules and stuff, but actual explosives that are used to...
Like EOD, like ordnance.
Yeah, it's anything to separate multiple stages of the rocket, having it actually separate from all the ground systems. So it's a pretty, not to brag, but I think it's a pretty important system. Being able to see all the lasting hardware be used for this last mission.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we were actually, just in ULA last week in Denver talking about this upcoming launch and in the actual vehicle that's going to get us there. And they were talking about how it's historic because it's going to be the last medium Delta.
Yes.
Yeah. There's some good stuff going on with GPS. It seems like July is like the month of launch, or summertime, I should say.
Yes. Yeah. There's another one. Also, the next upcoming Atlas launch, Atlas 5 launch, AHF-5 is launching in June. So yeah, it's busy summer.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we're right around 16 minutes in, and I'm going to start something new. We're going to start on this podcast. So at the end of every video interview I've ever done and print interview for the last 5 or 6 years, I've always ended it by asking one question. So I'll ask it to you first, sir. Give you a second, ma'am, to think about
it.
No pressure. Dun, dun, dun.
Improv.
Where were you on the night of? No. What do you live your life by? What do you march to? What's your phrase, your quote? The thing I've seen you like the most on Instagram, those are on Pinterest. What gets you? What motivates you?
I hate to quote the core values, but excellence actually. I want to be excellent with my use of time, my use of resources, the use of my abilities, and so. One of the reasons I'm in the Air Force is because the Air Force's values really align with my core values, including excellence at the top. And so as long as I can be excellent, which doesn't mean perfection, but just actually giving the honest best of my ability, time, and resources, I'm all in.
Yeah. Makes life a lot easier when the organization you work for, you really don't have to change much to it. It's just kind of natural. It's what you grew up with, it may be. And,
totally.
And I think, being excellent too, it doesn't even mean it means striving probably, right? Striving for excellence. Yep. You don't have to produce excellence.
It's not perfection. So
how do you incorporate that as a captain or as your daily routine? What's that? What's that like?
So I'm a family man. I have 2 kids. So busy life plus job responsibilities. So if I'm about to take on something new, the easiest way is, does this help me be more excellent with my commitments? Or is it actually going to detract from all the commitments and I'm going to do a subpar job on all of them because I'm taking this new thing on? In the case where it doesn't do that, for example, I just finished my sailing certification so I can rent boats and sail in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
That helped me.
That's right? Awesome.
All right, I have a new idea for a new story, guys. What do you think? All right, I got one laughing
I'll
over
take
there.
y'all sailing.
Jacob, our audio engineer, he's excited.
So that, for example, helped me enjoy my family life even more. I've taken my wife and kids out on the boat. It helped me relax on the off time so I'm better at work. So that contributed to my excellence. So that was a good additional thing to take on.
Chief Wright, Chief Master of the Air Force, and even our AF Space Command Chief, Chief Toberman, they talk about resilience, being resilient all the time. They talk about, Chief Toberman says, what if today at 4:30 you had to leave? It wasn't, you could stay to 4:31. What would you do different? Would you delegate more? Would you say no to more? Would you find ways to improve? And then once you left, what would you do? And he talks about, he's a big fly fisherman. He goes fly fishing every single weekend. But things like that, that's what probably allows for you to come in Monday and be excellent, is you're in a good mental place, something like that.
Yep.
How about you, ma'am? You had a couple minutes to think about it now.
Yes,
so.
I know. I've been simmering with good ideas. I would say being almost 2 years out of the academy, so I graduated in 2017. Being here at SMC for my first assignment has made me really try and break out of some of the, I would call them cadetisms a little bit. And what I mean by that is, at least for me, what I try and hold myself to, as well as encourage other junior CGOs and lieutenants, that don't be so hard on yourself. It's okay to make mistakes. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have to give a presentation somewhere and you just utterly just bomb this presentation, and then you're carrying it around with you and all that. But I think one important thing to realize is that, well, for one, it may have not seemed as bad as you think other people thought of. I mean, in a lot of instances, a lot of people are thinking about themselves,
We're
thinking
almost
about other
critics
things.
sometimes,
Yeah,
too.
we're pretty hard on ourselves, but it's good to make mistakes, because how else are you going to learn something?
Preach.
Is the thing. So if you go and try and be perfect, or you really try and be excellent all the time, sometimes you're just not going to get there. And I think it's important to realize that as you grow as a person, as an officer, that the mistakes that you make, I mean, it characterizes who you're going to be. And I think it's important to maybe not embody that too much and cause yourself too much angst.
I heard, I love what you just said. And there's something that I heard a PA major say not long ago, and something now it's something I now request of my boss, and that's give me room, give me space to fail. Because if I'm going for home runs every time, because there's probably a chance where I'm going to strike out once or twice, but I'll hit home runs the other time. And it's something that he said, absolutely, Sal, run with it. And that's something I hope other two future leaders right here, I hope it's something that you always encourage your folks, your enlisted, your young CGOs who will work for you, to always have room for failure. Leave it, because that's where I've learned most from failure. Not from my success. The few successes. That's wise. Sage advice.
Yeah, don't be afraid. Just go out and do it. I feel like, well, I don't want to speak for other cadets and academy grads, but I definitely was very afraid to mess up. But gotta get past it.
Yeah, don't like failure. Don't fear it. But don't when it happens, don't be afraid too much from it. Cool. All right. Well, I hope this wasn't too bad.
That's good. That's good.
It's good.
No, it's great.
Thank you all for your time, for being here, and Now have your friends sign up for Generation Space podcast. Send it to mom and dad.
We'll do.
Cool. So that's it for another episode of Generation Space. Thanks for tuning in with us, and here's to next time.
Next time on Generation Space, our second GPS-3 launch is coming up very soon. We'll go back to the Space and Missile Systems Center to hear the origin story. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share the podcast. Generation Space is a production of Air Force Space Command Public Affairs. The Generation Space theme is by First Lieutenant Tyler Whiting, our audio engineer is Jacob Mosolf, and our video producer is Staff Sergeant J.T. Armstrong. For more info on Air Force Space Command, visit our website at www.afspc.af.mil. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Thanks for supporting the airmen who aim higher. They used to say the sky's the limit, but for us in space, there is no limit.